panel. Every year we cover marketing, PR, and cannabis, and the story never really changes. Everything's illegal. You can't do anything. So this year we really sat down, and luckily with our team here, came up with a topic that's really, I think, on the cutting edge of what we need to be talking about in cannabis. Is everything in almost every situation becomes crisis management. Every day there's another fire. This is an industry living on the edge where it's great that all these states are moving forward, but it is still federally illegal, and that can be taken away at any moment. And so, with all of that said, it is a dance. Whether it's marketing and PR, whether it's leadership, how you're packaging your products. I mean, across the board, in different states and in different markets, the challenges are many. And so we have a bright panel here today. We're going to have Michael Elkins be our moderator and introduce the rest of the panelists. But without further ado, this is crisis management for marketing and PR in cannabis.
Thank you. Thanks everyone for being here. I'm going to go ahead and have our panelists, we'll start to my right, introduce themselves for all of you. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Duree of Duree & Company. We do public relations, marketing, crisis communications for various clients in the cannabis space, cannabis and hemp. And I'm happy to be here. 21 years in business, been in business quite a bit in the cannabis space. So over the last several years with all of the changes that have happened and what's to come, I'm excited to talk about navigating those landmines. So I'm happy to be here.
Hello, how are you? My name is Oz, or at least that's what they call me. I'm the marketing director of FLUENT. I also do creative, branding, and sales. So I think it's a very good panel to be in because, as you mentioned, it's a crisis all the time. And you're trying to manage all the compliance issues, legal issues, and just the market issues. So definitely it's something that I'm willing to talk today and happy to talk about.
Hello, my name is Jill Ferris. I'm a native New Yorker. I've been in the cannabis industry for 5 years. I began as a market leader for Women Grow, a national networking organization for women in cannabis. Then I launched the brand Tikkun Olam, an Israeli brand of cannabis that is now here at VitaCann, but we launched in 5 states. So my experience is actually with regulations in other states as well. And now I'm the creative director of Trulieve Cannabis in Tallahassee, Florida.
Well, thank all of you. Thank you for being here, each of you. I think one of the issues that comes up in the context of crisis management and in marketing is education. I think we've heard that discussed here today a little bit already. So we'll start with Duree and then hear from everybody else. What is the role in education when you're, from a PR perspective, if you're dealing with crisis management? And I guess the second part to that would be, where do you need to direct the education?
So from the PR and marketing perspective, we're always having to educate and wanting to educate both consumers and media. And on the crisis side and kind of navigating the landmines, oftentimes what we're approached with is folks who don't understand, or the laws have changed, or the way that they're implementing the laws have changed. And so that educational component, both to consumers, patients on the cannabis side, on the CBD and hemp side, on the consumers. And when we work with media, we oftentimes will get a call from a journalist, and it could be within the state or outside of the state, where they ran their own lab panel and things are not showing what they think, and they don't understand it, and they don't know how to read a COA. And so we're having to help even educate the media to sometimes prevent the train wreck that's about to happen with them covering something in a way that is not correct because they don't understand it. And it's not their fault, but a lot of times just in this space, people don't understand. And I mean, I could bore you with the stories, but when they happen to each of the brands, it can happen at any time. It can happen on a 3-day holiday weekend, and people come in, and it could be a reporter that's coming in and they want to do a story. And so we have to help our clients quickly, very quickly, and within a moment's notice, really help educate. Usually it's, for us, it's the reporter, or sometimes it can be law enforcement that comes in and a story happens that's not even really a story, but there's just such misinformation right now. And once it goes out there, you can't pull it back. So for us, navigating that and helping our clients both with media and even with the patient or the consumer. And obviously it's different types of communication, but I feel like everything I've done since I've been in this space for quite a while now is help educate. And I don't think that's ever going to change. It continues to evolve, and I think we as educators on some way have to continue to evolve and help train, teach, and just explain to others the ever-changing space that we're in.
Yeah, I think there's two challenges in the education side. I think first of all, there's this preconceived notion that we need to educate patients, and that's it. And when you get into it, you understand that you need to educate everybody, including physicians, which is like counterintuitive that physicians should be educated, but you can find a lot of preconceived, wrong information and stuff that you need to kind of get it. So one thing that we did at Fluent was we need to start to educate everybody, not only understand that our patients are the ones to be educated. The other challenge is actually that we make fun of it, and the marketing team is like, everybody's an expert on the cannabis industry. You speak with everybody, and everybody's an expert. They know everything, and it's not, most of the cases, it's not really true. So you need to fight a little bit with that, and kind of come with a more basic Cannabis 101 approach, because that's the other challenge, that sometimes you get people educating you and they're already talking about terpenes and flavonoids and all these amazing things, but they're like, hey, I don't even know what CBD means. Can you start there? So what we're doing is starting on the 101s and growing from there.
I think I'm a lot consumer facing, and I think some of our challenges are our restrictions. So if you want to give medical information, we cannot really make claims unless there's testing behind it, Also, we're sometimes faced with the patients themselves complaining to a degree that it causes a lot of attention, So then it's managing that and making sure that patients understand where we're coming from in those incidences.
So there's a lot to unpack with what each of you said. So Oz, I'm going to go back to you first. You mentioned about educating everybody.
Yeah.
And from a marketing perspective, what's the strategy there? You're smiling at me. So go. What's the strategy for that?
I think the first strategy is educating your teams. It starts in-house. It doesn't really make sense if my marketing team or outreach team doesn't know what they're talking about. Because our outreach team is dealing with doctors, and our retail teams are dealing with patients. So it's all about, we're starting inside. We're making a lot of internal educational videos and stuff to get everybody inside to really understand what we're talking. Because again, there's another preconceived idea that everybody that works in this industry is a consumer, and it's not close to that. We have a lot of people that work in our company that are not consumers. So you actually need to understand, we need to educate these people about it. Completely. So I think that's it. It's a lot about doing the work in-house.
Jill, can you?
I totally agree with that. Yes, making sure that everybody's educated, because we're the one speaking about it. I think like every product that we have comes with an FAQ that goes to everybody so that the whole company understands what is unique about this product and what the benefits are.
Duree, can you speak to strategy on that a little
So,
bit?
and I'm the one that's not in-house, right? So we're kind of the exterior, we're the PR agency that's working with a variety of brands. So we're the ones communicating to the media. And it's very different how we communicate to the media based on, what are we talking about? I mean, obviously on the hemp side, we can't make any claims at all. In my entire career, which is, quite a few decades at this point, never have I represented something that you can't say what you can use it for. You can't make a claim. You can't even use a hashtag with a claim on it. So navigating that over the years and how it continues to evolve on our end and staying a part of what's the new direction or what's the new directive. But from our perspective, we can't make claims, and we don't make any claims. And that's really a challenge when the first thing we do with a reporter, especially if we're talking kind of on the hemp side in CBD, where we can ship product, right? So we can ship and send product and we want them to sample it. Obviously very different with an MMTC where you have to have a card. Obviously that's very, very different. But we're having to sell that to the reporters. And the first thing they say is, great, what can I use it for? And then we have to say, well, we can't tell you what you can use it for. And so it's really, we've navigated it. It's very challenging for us. we certainly work with our in-house counterparts on their educational aspect. A lot of times what they're using to educate, consumers is, I think it's all right. To educate consumers is also sometimes what we can use. Again, it depends on, is there a claim? Are we talking about hemp? What are we, it really kind of depends what they're coming up with and because my biggest fear is that we do something that one of our hemp clients, let's say, would get an FDA warning letter, and that it is not ever something that I want under my watch, and I certainly want to make sure that we're not doing anything that would cause that. So those are those landmines that we have to help the clients. Honestly, there have been some times that we've looked at client materials, websites, things that they've put out, and we've had to say, this is a claim, we just want to flag to you, we're a little uncomfortable with this, or hey, has legal taken a look at this, because this makes us a little bit nervous. So, and when we work with our clients, we're very much hand in hand. Sometimes I like to say I'm the Grinch, or I'm the Christmas morning, nightmare, or I'm so sorry to be the negative Nancy, or whatever you want to call it, but that is our job as a consultant to our clients, is to help them also look at it from the journalist perspective or from an outsider's perspective. So we love working with our in-house contacts to help navigate, okay, we're talking to patients, we're talking to doctors, we're talking directly to consumers, and figuring out, okay, how do we navigate all of that without getting into trouble? So I think that's always, and it does continue to change. What is the packaging? How are they enforcing it? What are they looking at now? It just continues to change, and therefore, it's not like any other product where you get it and you're like, okay, until we redo the packaging, then we're good. I mean, the packaging has, and you're laughing, I'll turn it over to you all, but definitely feel free to take it over. I don't want to do all the talking, but you all can speak to that better, but it's constantly changing.
No, I mean, the packaging. What's happening now is all of the packaging for all the companies in Florida has to change over. And it's conscientious, because what happened is they legalized edibles, and flower and edibles have to be in all white packaging. And I think they were realizing that there's a lot of stuff out there. There's a lot of edibles, there's a lot of cute names, and they're really looking after children. And when you see the difference, a line of medical packaging and a line of real edible packaging, you could see that what is attractive to children and what is not. But we had to change they were changing the regulations on the fly, and the deadline didn't change. So we're waiting for okay, so some regulations come out, then the second regulation, so all the color has to come off, all of this has to come off, everything has to be an opaque white, and then we all have I don't know about you, but we also have partners. Right, we have other companies that we grow, package, process for. So we have other brands like Binks and Bang and Sunshine Cannabis. So then we had partner regulations that weren't coming out. They weren't coming out, and they will not. We had to find a temporary solution because they weren't giving us the actual constrictions and the deadline is still the same.
So you said a lot there, and I wanted to kind of maybe go back on that. You mentioned two things that I think are interesting, and you mentioned this earlier, which was the regulations, and there's an extensive amount of them, but packaging being one, I know digital media is another problem.
Big.
And you said something a second there, which was you had partners and you had partner regulations. Are you referring to regulations with partners in different states?
No,
or are you referring to partner regulations here in Florida? Okay,
yes.
So you talked about the changing in the packaging. So if each of you could speak to the strategy, maybe generically or by specific example of what do you do when you have packaging A and the regulation changes, you have no choice but to change. So what's the strategy? And Jill, I'll let you go first on that. How do you fix that?
I wonder, what can I say? Well,
depends on the day, right?
The truth is that I got there and I already wanted to redesign the packaging is what was happening.
So you were okay with that?
So I was okay with it, but I had to redo 10 times. I had to redo the design because that's how many times those rules came out. And crazy little things like, it can't be neon color. What's a neon color? Well, this is light blue. Well, it looks too neon. It's like, take it off the computer and print it. It's, but it was such a challenge as a designer, but this is what you this is what you sign up for. This is, I always like to say, we never promised you a rose garden. This is not an easy business. We're growing a plant, that's number one, right? And we're dealing with these regulations. And Florida is definitely the strictest and the toughest to go through.
So Oz, from a strategic marketing perspective, when you're faced with a sort of, I would call it, I would use the word crisis, where the packaging, the restriction on the packaging changes and it's a short turnaround. What's the advice you're providing, or what's the strategy that you could share with the group here about how do you handle that?
Well, first of all, I agree with everything you said. Like, I feel you so much. I think the strategy, honestly, understanding all the planets you need to align to get packaging out, is get on it right away, because it will take time to get all the things approved. Like, and again, it's not only designing a box, you have to source the child-proof aspect of it. You have to understand pricing. You're running a business, so you have to understand all those things. And then it's where you're going to source it. Is it going to come from China? Remember, we have a COVID year, so it's a mess. So we're going to source it from the US, a little bit more expensive, or something that we're willing to do. So all those things come into play even before sending the designs to the DOH. And then DOH. And that's really, and by the way, I agree with you, we have to have empathy. We're in this together, including the DOH. I'm actually happy that the Department of Health exists and they're approving all these things, you know, but it is very challenging. Like this year and last year has been all this packaging changing, and we don't really understand what they're saying. Like, the rule is vague, is open. And again, I don't have lawyers in my team. I have designers, I have creative. So we know about color theory, you know, and they don't. So it's even discussions about what you mean about neon color. Like, they don't really mean that, but you have to kind of pick their brains to understand, oh, this is what they mean. And by the way, I totally agree with the children's side. I have a 5-year-old, and I don't want that my kid to be close to an edible that he thinks is going to be tasty or interesting for him. So I completely understand that. But on the other hand, I think, like, for example, not changing the deadline has given us a lot of headaches, because we're like, do you understand that we need to, as soon as I hand the phone, I need to call China and get in all this? And we're not talking about 10 boxes. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of them. So it is a big, challenging problem that we're dealing with right now.
Yeah, and one thing I would say too is what we're talking about is it's very subjective.
It is.
What color is neon? What color? And there's not they can give rules and regulations, but until you show it, until you've gone through it, what you see as neon and what I see as neon could be totally different things. And so I think that's still the challenge kind of in all that we do, is how subjective it is based on who you're talking to or what their understanding of that new rule or law or, you know, whatever, or guidelines or the packaging may be. And so I think there's a lot of room for interpretation, which makes all of us, you know, get nauseous and sick and, you know, nervous, because there isn't an exact, it's not an exact science for it's this. There's so many, will you allow this or will you allow that? No. And we understand that there's a method to the madness, and we respect that, but it doesn't make it easier on our side to navigate kind of that.
Exactly.
Go ahead.
Right. Well, we actually have a compliance attorney on our team as we're designing to constantly interpret, and even then they can't. Right,
Yeah.
because what they do is they don't really answer you, they just paste the regulations back on, so you have to guess what they're really talking about.
Well, we have times, and again,
We don't answer anyone as attorneys. It's always maybe, maybe.
No, but I mean, they do, the DOH will just paste the rules back, so we have
Right.
to guess, okay, which one of these is not like the other, you know?
So, did you want to go?
yeah, like, and again, they're learning too. As we're learning how to run these businesses, they're learning how to run the Department of Health on the cannabis side. So we got calls with them. They're the nicest people in the world, but sometimes we're talking and they in the middle of the conversation, they caught a loophole that we just say, hey, but this is that, and like, oh, yes, we need to fix that. So it's part of that dynamic that I think is healthy. And again, I'm happy that they take our phone calls and we have conversations with them, but it's still very challenging.
I'm going to put this to the panel, and Duree, have you speak to it first, and then we'll go around each. It sounds like there's an interesting dichotomy happening here. Although it's heavily regulated in the state of Florida, I'm hearing, but you can tell me what you think, there's an element of it kind of being the wild, wild west too. Can you speak to that?
Well, definitely. I think it's definitely the wild, wild west in Florida, just given how we're set up. Obviously, a lot of folks are very excited, thinking things are going to change. I know probably all of us in this room are excited about that and looking forward to it. But I mean, I feel like all day long, it's shifting gears. Something comes up, a new regulation, something changes, there's a new interpretation, somebody else had an issue that, oh my gosh, if that's the interpretation that affects all of us and how we're working on it. So it is the wild, wild west, but things are progressing, so I don't want to make it like it's terrible. I mean, we've come a really long way actually in a really short amount of time if you think about it. So I think we're definitely making progress, but and it is crazy. I always like to say my experience in this industry is like dog years. Every year is times 7. So, you know, it's like there's a lot of shifting and changing. And actually that's what I enjoy about what I do is I like being fast paced and, you know, this is it because you never know from one day to the next what may come down. And I mean, I'll turn it over to you all, but it's definitely crazy and fun and all of that. So that's what keeps me going. I don't know if you feel the same way.
Yeah, it is. I wouldn't think that packaging is the wild, wild west. Actually, they have the very strict there, but there's other places where you go, okay, let me see, like, you know, we can do a lot of branding in other places and our emails and our text messaging, which is another nightmare for different reasons. But it's definitely other places where you can do, at least from Fluent perspective, we love branding, we love like design, so we can do the things that we think connect with customers in other places, but not necessarily on the packaging.
I'm just going to jump in.
Generally, I'm asking.
I'm going to say that, you know, I think about like Wild Wild West with product innovation. Like sometimes we're like come up with ideas and go like, let's see if we can get it through. Yeah. You know, like mixing products together and that kind of thing. You know, let's see if they'll do it. Yeah, like we just once in a while just take a risk, and sometimes we get it.
And that's part of the game, honestly. Right. Like in this industry, like it's moving. So it's not that it's like, remember this industry in Florida 2 years ago, we didn't have flour, for example, or edible. So it's definitely changing. So definitely you need to have that dynamic of pushing a little bit and like pushing the line a little bit to kind of move it slowly, but move it. So right. I think every MMTC is doing their work in that regard, you know.
So
it's not just packaging, it's the names of your strains and the names of your products as well, like almost everything.
Yeah.
So shifting a little bit, Oz, you and I had emailed about this.
Yep.
Digital media and social media, which is prevalent obviously in everything that's really happening in business today, and it's a huge part of what everyone's doing. But in this industry, it's unique for sure.
Absolutely.
You had emailed me about a couple things. You mentioned the Silicon Valley strategy and a few other things. I wonder if you could kick this portion off with, generally speaking, about that.
Well, let me talk a little bit of my background because it's going to help. I used to work a lot on television, and I did a lot of human rights and politics as well. And I was involved in politics. And you can, for politics, that is the nastiest business in the world, you can do whatever you want in social media, and we have seen that recently. Right? And we were getting away with anything. Then I get it 2 years ago into this industry, like, okay, let me see how I can do this. And then it's like, nope. So it's been a challenge, and you have to, again, understand the other side. Like Silicon Valley, you know, they have to deal a lot with the federal government. So for them, it's not, they don't care too much about the MMTCs, they care about what the federal government is doing to them. So it's been a long war. For example, like we decided to get out of Facebook. It's like, if you don't want us here, like just stop that relationship. We're still on Twitter, we use Instagram, but we have been shut down twice. There's a lot of shadow banning. Now there's a nightmare with the carriers and doing text messaging. They're banning every word in the dictionary that can connect to cannabis. So it becomes, again, a challenge, and thank God I have a very creative marketing team that we can find creative ways to go around it, but it really doesn't make sense because it seems to me that what they're separating is the brand or the products from the consumers and the patients. We just need to communicate what we're doing and tell, you know, we understand it still needs to be a heavily regulated product, even in social media. It's all clear, but the rules are completely nonsense if they exist. Like it's just like weird policy. So, you know, it's been challenging. It has been changing a little bit in the last few years, but we still have a long way to go to get where we need to be.
Duree, can you address that?
Sure. I mean, it's, and I know even C-Lab struggles, and even if you have tried to follow them or come to an event, I mean, they've been shadow banned. And so certainly keywords, terms, it's a challenge. There are workarounds. It depends on how much, and again, it's very different if you're talking hemp versus, there are ways around it, but it's exhausting. Yeah. It's constantly changing. It's miserable. It's not fair, to be quite frank. And it's like you're trying to play a game and the rules keep changing every single time you learn how to play the game. And then they change the rules. So it's made it really difficult, and it's scary, and it's not fun to navigate at all. And it makes marketing for us as marketing people, it's very difficult. I mean, we just want a fair, even playing field just to do what other brands can do. And so I mean, obviously we're all hoping it's going to get better, with what's to come. But in the meantime, we're in it now, and it's not going to happen today or tomorrow. And so it does make our life really difficult. And then going back to the branding aspect of it, if you change your packaging, all your stuff on your socials has to change. And it's not just about the packaging. If the packaging changes, then your imagery needs to change, and your e-blasts need to change, and even if you can get an e-blast.
Everything.
So it's so layered that one change forces everything. It's a trickle-down effect with everything on the marketing side, where you might have to change your packaging, which still is a huge deal, but it affects everything else. And so then it affects your socials. To tie it full circle back, it affects your socials. It affects what you have going on, and everything across the board. So I'm hoping we get a much better. I mean, I'd like to think it can't get much worse. I'm afraid to say that out loud, but I'm hoping that we're going to get some more help soon. But it certainly has been challenging, and it's very scary. I mean, if you all can put yourself in that position, whether you work for a big brand or not, or you have your own individual brand, to be completely shut down and shut off and not being able to communicate with whomever your target demo is devastating, and it's really hurting businesses. So I know we're all in agreement on that. It certainly is tough to navigate. We're dealing with it day in and day out, but I'm trying to be optimistic that things are going to change soon.
It makes overcoming the stigma really difficult, and educating patients about the real functioning of the plant and how it can help you, because we just can't say those words. They're funny, so we've had this problem ever since cannabis started, and you maybe get away with it, but we can't say cannabis. and all of the phone carriers just came out with no words. So when we're texting, we can't use simple words like flower, edibles, kush, pre-rolls. I mean, there's some words, and then they have suggested words, which is product. Everything is say product. So it's really, really hard, because this is new. We're overcoming stigma. We want new patients. We want to educate patients that this is real medicine, and we're really inhibited from doing that. So you're always looking for ways and words, language, and even imagery. Even imagery, you have to be careful. Nobody can be using the product. Nobody that looks like anything, like child, oh, that person could be college student. No, make them older, It's very tricky, because it's like working with your hands tied. But we find a way.
Yeah, we find a way.
Until they shut that down. And then we find another way, and they shut that down.
Yeah.
So one of the tremendous benefits of social media for businesses is the data, right? And the analytics you can get for demographic and outreach, and you can really target. So I'm going to put this to the group, whoever wants to jump on this one first. What are the alternatives to get market data?
Well, I will say there are better options than social media, because social media is whoever wants to be there is there. You don't know if they live in Florida, you don't know if they have a car, you don't know much about them. They just may like the brand, or they just they just follow flower accounts or whatever. I think we have other tools, like the website is really good to get interesting information about our customers, and of course we have online ordering that probably around 50% of our sales at this point is online. So we get that data from those purchases, and it's really interesting to understand the difference between the consumer that is going, or the patient that is going online to pick it up, or they're walking. So that's where we're getting a lot more of the information, And of course the state provides a lot of information.
Yeah, exactly. We do have the information on the patients, because everybody has a license. And although we definitely maintain privacy of the patients. We can communicate to them directly. So we know how old the patients are, we know the products that they're buying.
Where do they live?
Yeah, where they live, you know, what area they live in. So that's the way. But once again, you have to address that very delicately as well because of HIPAA.
Absolutely.
And also, that gives you existing patients.
Yeah.
But to
Right.
try to market to new ones, that the challenge is you kind of have to look at what you have, but that doesn't always mean, they may just, I mean, there are, you know, it's all sorts of ages and groups now that are changing, but you can't get to them. So it's kind of a catch-22 in some ways, where, yeah, you have the information for the folks that are currently a patient and are currently ordering from you, but you kind of don't know who the others are because you can't get them in any other way, because you can't text them and you can't you can't, you know, target ads to them on social media. So there's a bit of guesswork, and I think just, you know, it's just, I think it's really everybody is a potential at this point, you know, and I think that's really the unbelievable thing is really just being able to, we want to market to everybody, we can't, so it's kind of a catch-22 there.
Right. So, Duree, I'll ask you, and we'll go across the panel again. In terms of crisis management, which I think is important in this industry, it's important in every industry. If you're looking at what businesses should be looking out for from a crisis standpoint, whether it's potential crisis events or clues to crisis events, if you could speak to those sorts of ideas.
Well, definitely looking at the current rules and regulations, and as they come out, and a lot of times they'll come out, and the reason they're coming out is that they changed the packaging and they went into a store and caused, you know, there was a problem. I'm talking more on the hemp side with that, and then that turns into something else. I mean, I've even had clients that more on the hemp side, but they have a farm they're growing, and law enforcement comes in and thinks that it's marijuana, and then that turns into a whole story. And so I think it's really anticipating and being prepared. And the other thing too is, no matter what aspect you're in, whether you're a lab or you're a manufacturer or whatever it is, time is not on your side. It used to be 5 years ago, 10 years ago, you could deal with it tomorrow, or you could get back to the reporter. What's happening now, just since COVID, for all of my clients, is when something happens, a reporter may reach out and say, hey, I heard about this, or most of the time there's that educational process where their facts and figures aren't even correct. So number one, but what you have to do is, there is no tomorrow. There is, let me get back to you at the end of the day. That's not an option anymore. I mean, reporters are literally coming and saying, I need a statement from you in the next hour. And to try to figure out what happened, if we're working with a client that has multiple locations, what happened, what does the COA say, what does the lab say? You don't have an hour. And so the most critical thing with anything crisis is it's immediate. It's not, I'll get back to you tomorrow, let me check with so-and-so. The story will run, it runs without your perspective, without your narrative in it. If it's incorrect, you want to clear that up, because once it's run in whatever it is, it's going to get regurgitated incorrectly and again. And when you go back to a reporter and go, but I want to tell my story now. I know that we declined you before, but now I want to tell the story. Their perspective is, I gave you your chance, I'm not doing another story. You had your opportunity. So in many instances here, when a reporter reaches out and you have a crisis situation, you've got one chance, you may have 1 hour to pull it off. And so it's not one of those things that you can put off until tomorrow. We used to be able to do that. I mean, when I started in the business, I did work with a fast food company. We had a beeper for emergencies, and you get the page, what happened, and you'd have a binder if there was a shooting, if somebody had food poisoning, and I'm dating myself way back. And you had that time. Now, it oftentimes will show up on social media. A lot of the social media managers are finding the crisis there before the CEO knows about it. A lot of times it's literally blowing up there, or on Reddit.
Reddit,
you know?
it's always Reddit.
You know, on Reddit, you start seeing things, and you can see it really quickly, and then you can be prepared for if it turns into or escalates into something else. And so obviously Reddit is a huge place for that, specifically in this industry. But it really is making sure that senior management, any management at any perspective, realizes you cannot sit on this. You cannot sit an hour or 2 or 3 or a day. It's got to go, like, you've got to deal with it right away.
Oz?
Yeah, I think a little bit, just to that point, it's like internal communications again. It's like management team needs to know and communicate to each other that something's happening. Because sometimes maybe, as you mentioned, sometimes my marketing team sees it on social media or on Reddit, And we need to communicate right, maybe to the cultivation team, because they are the ones that can give us a proper answer. So sometimes if that information stay in a silo, it's going to be a problem. So I think the best thing is internal communication between the leadership team, so they can react fast with all like the full perspective of the issue, not just one side of the equation.
I think like at Trulieve, we're really huge. We have 73 dispensaries. We have a team that really sits on this all day responding to patients. Yeah. And I think that keeps us ahead. Yeah. You know, so if something's noticed, it wasn't but a few seconds ago, and we nip it. With like Reddit, what will happen is, let's say we have product that is released in like drops. So some products are very exclusive, and we release them to certain dispensaries, and then the other dispensaries will get it the next time. Somebody will go into the dispensary, photograph what's on the board, and then put it on Reddit, and like they're just saying, how come we're not getting this? And it's like, oh no, you know, and then you have to explain it. But I think that you have to be prepared, and so we're always watching, and that really helps.
Jill, we're talking about crisis management, so where do you rank that in terms of things you need to be aware of and on top of? I'm curious, because a lot of companies will say, well, how often am I really going to have a crisis? But in this industry, maybe it's a little different. So where do you rank the need to be aware of crisis management and have a plan in place before it happens?
Except for staying on top of what's happening, it's very hard to have a plan in place because you don't know what the issue is. You know, is it a legal issue? Is it something happening? Is it somebody finds mold on your flower and everybody panics? You know, it's like you really have to just learn to react, and to learn to react smart and fast.
Oz, where do you put it from a priority standpoint, crisis management?
I agree completely that most of the crises are unpredictable. So you kind of understand that maybe mold or stuff, but you need to be kind of prepared to react. And some of them are not. Like, for example, with hurricanes, it's a good example of things that you know they're coming. So we have like a team that is ready to kind of be talking 4 times a day, understanding we need to deal with closures, with informations to certain locations, because the hurricane might be coming, you know, from South Florida, and it's not going to affect North. So that is part of it, like having, again, the whole team together, communicating with each other and handling the things that you can predict. But COVID is another good example of crisis management that we're still dealing with it at this point, but it was basically a whole year of it.
Duree, like if you were talking to businesses.
So, I mean, obviously it's what I do day in and day out. I think it's critical because I know that time is of the essence, and if you've missed that opportunity and the story goes, it's so hard to pull it back. And I'm talking with traditional media. I'm not talking about the Reddit side, which is critically important, and that's where things peak or where you see it.
Sometimes they start there.
It starts there, but then sometimes it ends up with a reporter calling because of that. And
exactly.
So to me, that time is so valuable. Over my career, I've been able to go, hey, if you see something odd on social media or something is popping, because you know we're the external agency, so they're in-house, I'm external, but I'm working with them, right? So I'm working with my client contacts, and my biggest thing is, please tell me if something is sounding weird, if you're seeing something out there that we're not seeing. Sometimes we're the ones bringing it to the client as well too, but I'd like to get it ahead of it popping somewhere. So let's figure out, is there mold? Is there, and I don't know, you know, or hey, what is the situation with COVID? And the challenge with COVID, which none of us, most of us, I don't think ever could have imagined it, but it continues to change with COVID. So there isn't one exact playbook because it's changed over the last year, right? What it started at, and then obviously being deemed essential, you know, tapping into that, taking advantage of that, and what does that look like for all of us, and how do we use that to our benefit? I mean, it's totally crazy to me that we're deemed essential, but yet on the flip side, what patients have to go through to get it it's completely different. I think it speaks volumes to where we're going, certainly, yeah. But you know, I think it's a good thing. But it's like, how do you have something essential that has all the roadblocks that it does? So, from our perspective, staying ahead of it, making sure that our internal client contacts know, I don't care if it's 10 o'clock at night, I don't care if it's Sunday at 2 a.m. If something is happening, I need the call because I'm likely going to be the one working on the draft of whatever the comment is with the client or the CEO or what is it, and making sure. So while you can't always have the script ready of what it's going to be because who knows what it's going to be at this point, having that in place, what does it look like? Who's going to call? Who does the speaking?
Right.
How do we do it? You know, do we never speak? Do we always speak? Does it depend on what it is? So, you know, having that kind of system in place, then it's easier to deal with whatever that actual thing may be that you're speaking about. But having that in kind of organized, and having your socials team ready, and having the CEO under, and having all those parts organized enough so that whenever it is that it happens, that we know what it is, and we just have to specifically address that situation, but we have kind of our methodology down.
So I think no panel at any business event is complete without addressing COVID. And it came up. So let's talk a little bit about COVID-19 and the impact from a marketing and or crisis management standpoint. I'll start with you, Jill. You know, your viewpoints on the impact of COVID, and what has COVID changed, and where do you think it's going with COVID?
Such a big question.
Right, huge.
Huge. Well,
Take your time.
First of all, when you're telling people something can bring them joy, and there's only one person in the room, like you're showing, you know, as far as visual design is, you know, all of a sudden it's like, oh, people aren't wearing masks, don't use that photo, or they're standing too close together, or don't use that photo. So it's really interesting. I think one of the difficulties is, though, not working together. Like we're working at home still, and you know, there's only so much a Zoom can do for you, you know, especially when you're designing, and you know, I'm directing other designers, and I want to be in front of them, and I want to look at what they're doing. That's a challenge, I think.
Oz, where are you seeing it from a marketing perspective? I know you have an extensive marketing background.
Yeah, I think first of all, when COVID hit and we were deemed essential, and we were all sit down to understand what we're going to do, the first thing we thought is, okay, we need to understand that we have a lot of patients with underlying conditions. It's like, that's something that we need to take into account. So the first thing we do, based that we are mostly a retail kind of industry, we have 24 locations, we were like, okay, we need to change our locations to adapt to this new reality. So we did what we needed to do to the locations to make people happy. But that wasn't enough. Like we understood that walk-ins was going to be a challenge for a lot of people. So it was actually an opportunity for us. I'm very like geek with the digital stuff. I've been obsessed with online ordering for a while. So it was a good opportunity for us to show what we had on that side. So we actually, I remember in January, we were probably averaging 20% of our revenue online ordering. It quickly in 2 months became 70%. And we activated curbside. Things that are going to still be there when COVID left. So I think what's that, like being prepared to make the necessary changes to make everything easy for everybody. So if you want to go and purchase your product, you can go in your pajama now, and you just wait in your car and just get it and leave here. So for a lot of people, especially senior citizens and people with underlying conditions, that has been a deal breaker. Like they just go to dispensaries that offer that.
Right.
The other challenge has been actually politics, because again, we are in a state and our consumers are not from one side or the other. They're like completely mixed. So sadly, the mask became like a political thing. So we train a lot of our teams to de-escalate that tension instead of just throwing a little bit of fuel to the fire, and kind of figure out ways.
Good luck.
Yeah, exactly. Figure out ways to kind of, if you aren't wearing a mask, like we have curbside, we can give you a discount. Like we figured out a way to kind of make everybody happy and not get into the politics.
Sure.
So that was challenging as well, for sure.
Duree, I know you.
Yeah, I mean, we obviously navigating the ever-changing, you know, the P word, pivot, everybody's had to pivot, all the brands had to pivot. Now, you know, a year ago, pivot was, you know, it was like Friends when he's screaming, pivot, 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 if you're a Friends fan. And so we've all had to do that. We're all exhausted now, there's no doubt about it. I'm exhausted, I don't even want to hear the word pivot, but we've all had to do that. And I think it really depends on what is the brand, certainly on your end of being deemed essential. We also do a lot in the hemp space, and when you talk about having to change, you went from, or a lot of our clients went from, they were in retailers, some of the retailers closed, they had to go back to e-commerce, and so it shifted, just like you all went to delivery more, and so it's constantly evolving. I think there's a lot of great things, there are a lot of silver linings, believe it or not, in terms of how we've had to change and continue to change, but also navigating social justice issues, political issues. Those are all things that have really, I know for us, we've had to help clients navigate, and the bottom line is people are upset about everything. No matter what you do, somebody's upset. And so that can escalate into in-person, online, consumer complaints, nasty grams via email from people who are upset about something, or products that aren't there and only at one location, and why aren't they somewhere else? And so, I think I try to look at that silver lining. The good news is people want their product and they want it, and we can't even keep up with the demand. And so it's a good and bad, right? I mean,
it's a good problem.
It's a good problem to have the way I look at it. And so I think for all of us navigating, what does that look like? We've all had to shift and change. And listen, we're still not out of it. Who would have thought? I would not have thought a year later that we're in this position at all. But I think that it's been really good in some ways, silver lining. It's been terrible for many people, but I'm really excited for the way that cannabis has morphed, evolved, pivoted during this time, and with the curbside and the delivery and all of that, it shows the resiliency of the brands, and so I'm proud of that, and the social justice issues and working to get folks out of prison, Last Prisoner Project, a lot of the corporate social responsibility opportunities there that have arisen, giving back to local charities, helping to do fundraisers and donate food to people. So there are a lot of those silver linings, and the brands have stepped up to be able to do that. And so I think that is one of those silver linings to really be able to give back.
So I think we're close to the 50-minute marker. So to pivot, the question, last question for each of you. It seems like there is a mass amount of product change or new product coming out sort of all the time. And I'm curious from a marketing perspective, like, what do you do with that? Because it would seem like that would change marketing strategies like in an instant. So Jill, if you could speak to that.
Well, basically, there's a reason why new products are coming out all the time, because we're discovering new things about the plant and new ways to process it. So you just have to speak to the benefits and promote that, and what makes each product unique and why you might choose one over another. Because there are many effects of each of the products.
Yeah, I think one of the most fascinating things about this industry is that we're actually very early stages. Even though we think we're already in, or we're making fun that we feel that we've been living all these years in this industry, it's actually pretty new. So innovation is number one. It's about what is the next thing that's coming. And again, a lot of people love flower, like classics, but there's other products coming out, other science is actually finding a lot of answers that are going to be great for medical. So I think it's just to have visibility on that and try to lead in one of those things. Maybe not everything, but definitely focus is like, this is what I want to do instead of this. But innovation has to be the number one thing for all cannabis companies.
And how do you deal with mass changes in product with clients? It would seem to me that would change everything as the pace that it's coming out.
And it changes our strategy, right? So we're constantly shifting the strategy, and obviously it depends on, are we talking about medical marijuana, are we talking about hemp? Even though everybody likes to lump them together, I think everybody in here knows the differences, and they are very different. I mean, even though they're very similar, but from a PR and marketing perspective, the way that we can approach them, given the rules and regulations, are very, very different. And so from a PR perspective, obviously if it's a new product and something, we want to announce it, we want to announce it to media, certainly very different hemp versus medical marijuana, and we can't send samples, we can on the hemp side, on the CBD side. And so how we approach it is very dependent upon how readily available is the product. You also don't want to upset people and send them in for something and not have the product available, because then you've got angry people. So there's a lot of that kind of proactive, strategic, navigating, and what does that look like, and having to even sometimes move some product that may have come in that maybe just isn't resonating, or hey, there are some products that are in development that may bring new demographics to it. And so I think that's also where there's a huge opportunity for us, where this doesn't appeal to this demographic, but this does. And so that may be an entree to get new patients in the door. And so I think it's just trying to navigate what that is, working really closely with what's the timing, what are we looking for, what do we look like. I mean, my least favorite thing to do is to find out about something after it's already live or out there or announced or somehow got announced in a way that we didn't help craft the messaging. So that's probably my least favorite thing. But so oftentimes we're brought in, once we know it's going to go, then we're brought in much earlier to go, okay, what does that look like? What is our timing? And figure all of that out. So we love to work with these guys. They're in charge of so much of the packaging and design, and then we really, the way I see us is that we really just amplify the work that they've done. And so we really want to help tell that story, the hard work and the redesign and all, and the new product and whatever it may be on the R&D side.
So I don't know if anyone's going to kick us out, so we'll do some Q&A.
Oh, we're done. We got the hook.
Nope, I just got the hook.
Got the
So
hook.
no, we will not do Q&A. But I'm sure that if you have questions, I'm sure everyone's here available to answer them. Thank you, everybody, for attending today. I appreciate it. Thank our panelists. Thank you.
Well, thank you. If you do have questions,